Good morning, Doug. Today, I want to talk to you about all that's going wrong in the world. Like, there's a lot that's happened in the last week since January 6th. Certainly, the storming of the Capitol, the shutting down of President Trump's social media accounts, the purging of many, many, many others on social media. What do you think about all this?
I think it's an overture to something much bigger. Uh, is it is it the equivalent of the storming of the Bastille, which actually started the French Revolution in 1789? Um, it's inevitable that the huge difference in opinions between the red people and the blue people is going to boil over. So, what's actually going to be the match that lights a stick of dynamite? It's interesting to me that Google and Facebook and Twitter and God knows who else have basically anybody that looks like they're conservative or even libertarian, uh, making it hard to organize. But yeah, this is just the beginning.
Hmm.
That's,
Well,
that's
what
my bottom
happens
line.
next then? Because I just don't. Does this strategy work? Does it work to like shut down everybody who is an opposing force or opposing view? What does it lead to?
What was that? Just before we went on the air, uh, I'd sent you a quote from a
Right.
friend of mine who's some scholar. And what was that quote
Yeah.
exactly? Because I don't have it in front of me. I
Actually,
know you
let
have
me
it in
pull it
front of
up.
you.
Let me find it. It says, once a country accepts censorship of the press and of speech, then nothing can be won without violence. Therefore, so long as you have free speech, protect it. That is the life and death issue in this country. Do not give it up. The freedom of the press, of newspapers, books, magazine, television, radios, movies, and every other form of presenting ideas. So as long as that's free, a peaceful intellectual turn is possible.
Well, it's becoming unfree. And now that the Democrats are in office, it's going to become even less free. So, yeah, I think violence is in the wind. This is what inevitably happens when you live in an empire. Empires always fall apart, and they usually have violent ends. And as I've said before, many times at this point, the US has degenerated into a multicultural domestic empire. So the only way you solve the problem
Mm.
is by separating people that have radically different views on the way the world works instead of trying to under. But as soon as the lid came off the pressure cooker, the place fell apart because it had no
So,
business being together to start with. So, the thing is that the United States is no longer America, quite frankly. So its raison d'etre is no. I
mm.
mean,
so
That's a very radical statement, a radical view. I
Right.
recognize
So
that,
breaking up,
but
and we did a whole episode
actual.
on that a few months ago now, and it seems like it seemed unlikely at the time still, but it seems like it seems totally inevitable in my mind at this point. So, so what do you think about? Sorry, we had
Yeah,
a.
it's.
Hmm.
I mean, it was. I'm not sure if MSNBC and CNN and the New York Times and the rest of these people actually made much of a big deal of Nancy Pelosi tearing up Trump's State of the Union address publicly. I
Right.
mean, that's actually quite an insult. I
It,
mean, was that act widely disseminated, or is that just something that came across through
I think it was
alternative
I think it
media?
was actually widely disseminated, but I think it was seen as by the tribe that she's in, the Democrats or the liberals or progressives, saw it as actually like a brave, bold, justified step, and didn't see it as this I don't know, upending of our basic institutions and decorum. Like they felt like it was a justified response. But you're right, that probably was a big catalyst to show how far the institutions had fallen.
Well, and at this point, it appears that online dissent of any type from our rulers, and let's admit it, this notion of democracy has nothing to do with we the people anymore. It's just a way of installing who your rulers are. And with the controversy over the legitimacy of this election and whether, all kinds of votes were phonied up in numerous ways. So how are you supposed to dissent these days? You can't talk online. People don't send letters to each other anymore. I don't know. I don't see any way out of this, quite frankly. In fact, if if it turns out that Trumpsters have more rallies once Trump is out of office, will the police just? I mean, that remains to be seen, but I wouldn't put it past them at this point.
I agree. The thing that scared me when, or worried me when right after this, the Capitol protests or riot, Biden came out and called it insurrection, and just labeling something that right away, without even just based upon tweets and news reports, like right away going to insurrection was definitely a worrying sign for me.
There, obviously, but I'm not sure exactly why, because just almost anything that you hear describing what happened. For instance, I read an article in the Wall Street Journal this morning that highlighted Trumpster, and they picked a guy who was kind of the bottom of the barrel. I mean, he had no money. He was living in they retailed some of his rather like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer drank the blood of children. I mean, that's what the guy said. This guy said, and mentions all kinds of crazy things. And the guy says, "Yeah, I was wondering whether I should go in the Capitol." He said the doors were open, so he could just walk in, and if I should go, he nudged me for
Yeah. The Lord never said no.
Anyway, the Wall Street Journal. I mean, it was presenting him a typical Trumpster. Okay, well, I don't know if he was typical or not. I mean, but he's the guy that the Wall Street Journal decided to make look like a typical Trumpster. So, how many of these guys were anti?
Right.
That ever going to be determined? It's hard to say. It's because once a particular group takes control of the apparatus of the state, well, then there's not going to be any state investigation.
Right.
Who do you believe? Who do you trust?
Yeah.
I mean, this is very dangerous.
Well, one of the big things I wanted to get your thoughts on, Doug, was because I know you're libertarian minded, and most libertarians will look at private businesses and be like, well, whatever a private business wants to do is fine. How they want to conduct their business, it's totally fine. But the conduct of Google and Apple and Amazon and other companies coordinating, to censor people. I mean, what do you think of that? It seems like these private businesses have taken on a different role than they've had traditionally in things.
Yeah, and it does seem like most of them are in what we would call the enemy camp at this point. Well, perhaps you can look at it this way. One hand washes the other, them in their growth in a number of ways, I guess. And now they're supporting. He summed it out perfectly in his writings. So that's what we actually have at this point. It's big money and big power. The corporations and the government have gotten together to their mutual advantage against the little people, which is to say everybody else. So I don't know how you turn this
Yeah, I'm not
around
sure.
at this point. I mean, you can't fight the government if you.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting.
So
I mean, I'm not sure where things go from
and
here, but I do think it's dangerous.
the fact that sure it is. Is this thing? Is this event at the Capitol, which and once again, I have no idea whether the actual violence, and there wasn't much, they say that Nancy Pelosi's and other people's computers were stolen, which might have some very interesting things on them. But who did that? I mean, allegations have been made that it was uh, a military special forces unit that was sent in there that did that. I don't know. That's an allegation that's floating around. Uh, was it Antifa or BLM? Well, if I was either one of those organizations, perish the thought, I would turn it into the equivalent of the Reichstag fire, which is what allowed Adolf Hitler to take over in Germany in 1933. I mean, great danger. There's a revolution here in Germany. We need more power. And Hitler got it. So are the Democrats going to use it that way? I mean, anything is possible because the fact is there are in every society across time and space, there are a certain number of Robespierre and there are certain or the kind of people that led the Russian Revolution, like Lenin and Trotsky. So we have those same personality types floating around in the United States, and they want to do exactly the same thing for the same psychological reasons as those guys and those others did.
Hmm.
So is it possible? Yeah, sure, it's possible. I just wonder, there are questions though that I'd like to have answered. I haven't seen the answers to them yet. It's that if the powers that be were aware that there were going to be, who knows how many, I've seen varying numbers, 30,000, 50, 100,000 Trumpsters in Washington, D.C., you'd think that some preparation, anytime you get that kind of number, anything can happen, even with Republicans who are, very different from the Antifa type people. But there didn't seem to be any preparation at the Capitol. And why were the doors to the Capitol open? Yeah, apparently they were breaking windows to get in, but the Capitol Police could certainly stop people from coming in the windows with a billy club or with mace spray. So why were the doors open? And
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah,
just
it's interesting.
improper,
There's a
quite
whole.
frankly. I mean, this ridiculous meme about it being the people's house.
It's not the people's
It's not
house,
the people's house.
clearly.
It's the house of the congressman, who rule the people.
Right.
Oh, not. So there's all kinds of unanswered questions that I'm frankly are ever
Yeah,
going to be
I
answered.
think you're right. I don't think they're ever going to be answered. I also think that, what is clear is that you'd like to think that it's not this way, but it really is just about who has and is willing to exert power. Because, you see the unwillingness of the federal officials to act all summer long when you have these BLM, mostly peaceful protests going all year long. I mean, cities being burnt to the ground, police standing down, you know, uh, and then they've got, I don't know, they brought in teams of prosecutors to go over the film, and they've already indicted several people from this, and I mean, I don't know if there's been any federal charges on any Antifa people from all the activities over the summer. Maybe there have, but I'm not aware of them. They aren't high visibility enough.
No, I'm not aware of any either. So it seems like the people in Minneapolis and Portland and God knows where else, it looks like they're going to skate. But these people in DC who didn't do anything really in any way comparable to burning down whole blocks in various cities, I mean, they're going to be prosecuted. So none of this is good, and it's going to light a fire under many millions of people in the U.S. who supported Trump, and they're going. Frankly, I mean, I don't know any of them. I'm in Uruguay at the moment, so they're associated with down here, but it's. It's just inevitable that this gets out of control at this point. I just don't see any way out. I hope I'm wrong, because I like good times. A lot of times are in, and who likes that? And furthermore, almost anybody that goes against an entrenched government is going to lose. So it just can't end well. I don't know how it is going to end, quite frankly. But
No, I don't think anyone does. I mean,
once again, we're flying blind, Matt, because all we know is what we read. All we know is what we read in the
right,
media.
it is unreliable, and I think the funny thing is,
it's very unreliable.
We rely so much on the media to understand what's happening, of course, around the world, but even what's happening near us. And without reliable sources of information about what's happening even around you, like in your, in your city, I mean, it's weird. It's hard to like you just don't know what to trust, and you can't see how any organization really could happen if people are actually trying to do something about it. And I don't know. It's interesting. It is really interesting. It is frightening to one degree or another, but at the same time, it does feel like it has to go this way. I mean, you could see all this coming for a long time, and I remember, gosh, at least I think I remember you saying this a decade or more ago. You just need to flush it down the toilet and start over. It just sees that there's no repairing what America has become or what the United States has become. You just need to wash it away and start over. And this is part of that washing away process. It might be a long, painful process, of just the disintegrating from the inside, the country, but it's probably necessary.
Well, the problem is that after what's left of the old America is washed away, there's no guarantee that what we're going to active people, ones that are going to grab everywhere. And those politically active people are invariably, as I've said many times in the past, the worst kind of human beings. They're the kind of humans that want to have power over other people. So after what's left of the old America is washed away, I can't see that it's going to get better. It's going to get worse. That's what always happens after serious revolutions. I mean, it doesn't matter what the so-called ideals of the people that destroy the old order are. The founding of America was unique in world's history in many ways, but even then, even though the U.S. America was the only country founded on the ideals of free minds and all in world history, frankly, but on the other hand, things were better in many ways in Britain. The ruler was several thousand miles away across, it took a slow boat to get there. So they were pretty well left alone. And once the Americans started governing themselves, their rulers were upfront and immediate and right among them, and had more moral panache than some ruler did. So revolutions are really just never good. Maybe 10 or 20 or 30 years after the revolution, things straighten out and fly right. But this decade is not going to be.
Unfortunately, we got to get through the
be
next 10 or 20 or 30 years to get to those better times. So it'll be interesting. Well, I think we'll just leave it at that today, because I just want to make sure this recording is how it all comes together for us.
Right.
And then we can continue tomorrow on this topic and see in the news that's transpired over the last few days as well. So anyway, I just want to leave it at that.
Yeah, like Lenin said, there are decades where nothing happens and weeks where decades happen. And the weeks to come, it's one of those things. And it's appropriate to quote Lenin, because
good time to be keeping a journal. I think these times are so interesting, and happening so fast.
Unfortunately. Well, I don't want to get involved in any street brawls or anything like that. So I'm pleased to be in a secure location where I can observe as opposed to participate. I mean, the people that do participate, they're already talking about putting them on no-fly lists.
All right. Well, I'll leave it there, Doug. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks, Matt.